both of my girls were such righteous and gracious women. I'd never met anybody like them. They were both raised by the same mother and father, and you could tell that.
You're watching the Spotlight Network. Starring Hollywood's newsman, Logan Crawford.
They now believe a single member.
He works with TV and film legends. And now, Logan's shining the spotlight on the world's top emerging authors and creators.
International were abducted.
This is Spotlight with Logan Crawford. Streaming on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire TV.
I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're featuring a terrific author. His name is Ralph Green, and we're talking about his deeply moving memoir. It is called The Long Goodbye Twice. It is a powerful, true story of love, family, faith, and caregiving through Alzheimer's. This unforgettable book follows Ralph's life with two remarkable sisters, capturing the heartbreak, devotion, and resilience that shaped his extraordinary journey. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. Ralph, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
Yeah, it's good to be here, Logan. Glad you could have me.
Good to have you on your show. Talk to us a little bit about your sisters, Rummy and Delfina, and tell us a little bit about them for the viewers who are meeting them for the first time.
The fact that we met was kind of amazing. I'd just gotten out of the Navy, and I worked a little while with the UPS, and then that was during their holiday season. But then I went from there to driving an old Borden's milk truck, delivering to stores down in the Pecos Valley. And one of the stores I delivered to was called Valley Grocery, and it belonged to their brother, Cliff, who was a clown, and he was a one-line artist. When I delivered there, I looked up at the front of the store, and there were three very beautiful women up there. I said, "Man, you have some nice-looking clerks up there, Cliff." And he says, "Yeah, just don't mess with the one with glasses on." So I looked back up there, and all three of them are wearing glasses. And he says, "One of them's my wife, the other two are my sisters." I said, "Oh, okay." So I met them both on the same day. And I actually, as I was putting the milk away, they'd come over and talk to me. I actually started flirting with Delfina first, but she wasn't wearing a wedding ring. Mm-hmm. And Rummy was. She was wearing a ring, so I kind of stayed away from her. And that went on for about 4 or 5 weeks, and I finally got the courage to ask Delfina out. She said, "I can't go out with you." I said, "Why not?" She said, "Well, I'm married and I have 6 kids." I said, "Well, that's kind of, why aren't you wearing a ring?" She said, "Well, I never wear a ring at work because I handling the boxes and stuff, it gets caught." She said, "But my sister's been a widow for 9 years."
Wow.
I said, "But she's wearing a ring." She said, "Well, that's our mother's birthstone ring. It's got her mother's ring and all of her children birthstones on it." So I said, "Okay." So I was kind of disappointed and heartbroken, but still, Rummy was very pretty and beautiful. I went over and started talking with her a little bit more and kind of stay away from Delfina. And she started flirting back pretty good. And one thing led to another, and we went out on several dates, a bunch of dates. And about a year later, we decided it was time to change our relationship. And I couldn't think of anything better to give her for Christmas, so I asked her to marry me. And on the 23rd of December, we got married. And I told her Merry Christmas. And then the rest is just history. She had one son already from her previous marriage. She was married in 9 years to her husband, Ramon, and he had been killed in a traffic accident. He rolled his truck one day driving out of Hagerman, and him and his friend that was with him both died in that accident. And they still call that curve Dead Man's Curve to this day. So it had a kind of she had a good life, but it had a lot of tragedy in it. She raised her son. He was 17 when I joined the group, and he started calling me Dad while I was still dating her. So that was a good sign that things might work out. I have 2 sons. I had 2 sons of my own, and of course, Troy. The story about Troy is in the book, but Alan is still. He just got transferred to California. He's a civil servant. He's retired military also. So, and Troy was in the Air Force for 8 years. But we had, Delfina and I had several things that brought us together throughout the 36 years I was her brother-in-law. She lost a son, Larry, to murder, which is also in the book. And I lost my son, Troy, to PTSD suicide. And we had several tragedies, together. And she lost her husband. He had a heart condition, several other things going on. He just fell down one day and spent time in intensive care, and I had to go over and help quite a bit with her property after he passed. And my wife Rummy got diagnosed with Alzheimer's at 58 years old.
Wow.
She had an early onset of Alzheimer's. Her last 6 years she was alive, she had no clue who I was. She didn't even know my name. She would tell her sister in Spanish I was the ugly old guy that worked here. She'd tell her, Cisa. That's what she called her, Cisa. You want something to eat? I can get the ugly old guy that works here to fix us something. And Delfina would look at me and say, "Did you understand what you said?" I said, "Yes, I understood what you said." She calls me that all the time. Está muy feo el hombre trabajo aquí. I'd say, okay. I said, well, and she asked me one time if I knew where her family was, and I said, well, such as I am, baby, I'm your family. I'm your husband. And she said, no, I've only got one husband, and he was Mexican, and he died. I said, well, I'm the guy that you married after him, even if you don't remember me. And she said, well, okay, but can you get me a cup of coffee? And I'd say, sure. So I'd go get her coffee, and she'd be happy with that. We had several things going on. When Troy passed, I got a call while we were at the dinner for Dudley's funeral. That was Delfina's husband, Dudley. And it was my son, Alan. He said, hey, Dad, is Troy with you? I said, no, should he be? He said, well, he was supposed to go to a seminar in Denver, and he never made it. I said, well, that's not like Troy, because he was a perfectionist in computers. He was both a master plumber and had a 2 master's degree in computer science. So he was handling a lot of people, a lot of different computers for colleges and stuff at that time. And he always believed in redundant systems. So he had gone up to the Bear Lake area of Rocky Mountain National Park, and decided he had gone to Afghanistan and had a survivor's experience there where he had a couple of guys die that he was working with, and he lived. And that I had talked to him about it, and it bothered him, but I thought we'd gotten past it. And PTSD is a funny thing. I've been in combat, and I was in the Navy 9 years and in the National Guard for 13, and the fire department for 20. And you see as much in the fire department as you do in a war zone. But we all have different coping mechanisms. And he had a wife and an 8-year-old daughter, and he just got up there and decided it was time to go and stabbed himself 7 times in the arm. And if this is too much for anybody, let me know. But stabbed himself 7 times in the arm trying to get his radial artery, but it was cold. That was his redundant system. He stabbed himself, and it was going to be 30 below that night. So those are 2 things it could have taken. He also took a lanyard and tied it on a tree and leaned into it till he hung himself. And we had to live through that. But anyway, Alan called me. I was still in the suit from the funeral, and they looked for Troy for 5 days, and they finally found him. They had to thaw him out for 3 days before they could do an autopsy on him. So, and Delfina's son, 3 years before that, had been murdered in his home at night. Three of his friends broke in and shot him. And I read a letter at the sentencing of the men who murdered him, and that's in that entire letter in its entirety is in the book also. But we had several things that kind of bonded us, over the years. And I had built a lot of things on her property. I'm a welder. I built gateways and arches and stuff like that.
Mhm.
We took an old satellite dish and I turned it into a gazebo, stuff like that. But we just had, and she helped me take care of her sister. My last, after Dudley passed and things, and after we found out she had pulmonary fibrosis, which we knew was terminal, and they said she probably only had 5 years left. I said, well, so I'm killing myself trying to take care of both of these properties in Rummy. I said, we need to figure something out. So what we did was I gave everything away. I gave away my house. I gave away everything in it. I had people coming in like a flea market, just picking stuff up, because I told them I don't want to waste time selling it. I got 2 terminal women here I need to take care of. And we moved in to Delfina's house, and she helped me take care of Rummy. The house was big enough. We all had separate rooms. And she would help me with the makeup and the hair, because when I did Rummy's makeup, she looked like a clown. I'm not a makeup artist. So, and heaven help you if I ever did her hair. But Delfina could do all that, and I took care of she had 5 pecan trees. I'd pick up the pecans and rake and do all that. How she got diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis,
Mhm.
she was over at mine and Rummy's house one day, which was only right straight across the railroad tracks. And I had gone over to her house to clean up what she called her orchard. She had some old grapevines that used to climb on this frame, and the frame was still there, but the grapevines had died.
Mhm.
And we're having a cleanup day, so I went over to pull everything out by the curb, and I went over and did that. When I came back, Delfina was sitting on the couch, and she started doing this, waving her hands. And I said, "Can you breathe?" And she shook her head, no.
Hmm.
So being a firefighter EMT, I pinched her nose and gave her 3 breaths to get her going again while she was still awake.
Hmm.
And I happened to have an inhaler that a person had left in the house that had fibrosis, which we didn't know that's what she had at the time. But she took 2 puffs of that, and she said, "Oh, well, I'm fine now." I said, "No, you're going to the ER." I said, "You need to go to the hospital right now." And we took her, and that day she was diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis, which they looked at some old x-rays. So, well, you've had this for 3 years already.
Mhm.
And the life expectancy is usually only 5 to 6 years. So she lived 6 years beyond that point. So, she lived, Rummy and I stayed with her for 2 years. And after Rummy passed away, she just went to sleep one night, and I heard her take her last breath. I was in the bed next to her, and she was still kind of in agony. I went and got her sister and said, "If you want to see your sister while she's still alive, you'll come on in." So we came in and both prayed over her and put our hands on her and prayed over her.
Mhm.
And there was no way I was going to abandon Delfina during her darkest hours, because we didn't know how many years she had left.
Right.
So I said, "Well, I'll just stay here and we can separate rooms or whatever." And we cared so much for each other as brother and sister-in-law that as the caregiving turned towards her, the love changed completely into I'm in love with you.
Mhm.
And I told her, "You have to know this, that I can stay here, but this is how I feel after a while." And she was like, "Well, I'm very fond of you and I like you, but I'm not sure that I love you."
Mhm.
I said, "That's fine." I said, "I can never touch you and stay here and take care of you and take care of your needs and whatever." And about 4 months later, she says, "Can you come here?" I said, "Yes." I said, "What?" She said, "I don't like you anymore."
Mhm.
I said, "Really?" She said, "Yeah, and I'm not fond of you anymore." I said, "Oh." She says, I don't like you. I'm not fond of you. I love you, and I'm in love with you. So
Wow.
what are we going to do?" I said, "Well, I think we should get married."
Mhm.
She was, they were very Catholic.
Yep.
They were very Catholic. So that's why Delfina stayed in the marriage she was in for 56 years.
Wow.
When she could have very easily left. It was, I won't talk bad about the dead, but it was not a good marriage. she couldn't believe. She told me that I can't believe the difference in men. It's the difference between that. And the first time I took her a cup of coffee in bed in the morning, she broke into tears. And I said, "Is the coffee too hot?" She said, "No." So I was married for 56 years, and her husband had never brought her a cup of coffee or anything.
Wow.
I said, "Well," and then I got a story in there about sopapillas in the book and other little things that I just do naturally that she wasn't used to having done. And it was an amazing. Both of those I call them my girls.
Mm-hmm.
Both of my girls were such righteous and gracious women. I'd never met anybody like them. They were both raised by the same mother and father, and you could tell that.
Mm.
But Delfina especially was so gracious. If you took her a glass of water, she would thank you like you just handed her a pot of gold.
Mm.
And because she just wasn't used to that.
Yeah.
She was the head of the household. She took care of the husband and the 6 kids. She found the house that they lived in and got the mortgage on it and all that kind of stuff. Dudley was a provider. He was in the Air Force for 15 years and got out because he was going to have one unaccompanied tour. But he was a diesel mechanic. He was a jet engine mechanic in the Air Force, but he was a diesel mechanic. And one of his grandsons, at 14, we helped him rebuild an old John Deere Poppin' Johnny
Wow.
tractor. When he got it, it was a piece of trash, and when he got it done, it looked brand new. And Grandpa and me both went out there and helped him with it. And he works for John Deere now. That kid did. He was 14 then. He's like 30 now. And he works for John Deere out of Lubbock.
Wow.
So that was an amazing transition. But we had so much going on in our lives that bonded us together, the 3 of us. And it was just they were both 2 very amazing women that anybody that knew them just loved them to death because they were so nice to be around.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful that you've memorialized their stories with this great book. And both women are lucky that they had you in their lives to love them, help them, guide them. And it's such a compelling story. You've done such a wonderful job here today telling it to me. There's a lot more in the book, folks, and it is truly a story of love and heartbreak and resilience. It is called The Long Goodbye Twice. It's a powerful, true story of love, family, faith, and caregiving. This unforgettable book follows Ralph's life with 2 remarkable sisters, Rummy and Delfina, capturing the heartbreak, devotion, and resilience that shaped his extraordinary journey. Ralph, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Yes, Logan, really appreciate you having me on, and it's been an incredible journey with my 2 girls, and
yeah.
I wrote this book in hopes that it would give people out there going through the same thing some insight as to what they have coming up, and a realization that things work out. Just hang in there and continue to love, and things will work out.
Exactly. Follow your heart and things will work out, no doubt. And be a good, kind person as you are and as they were. I appreciate your time here today. Thank you so much. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time.